Serafina Nightingale had lost everything at age 17 when her beloved father died in a car accident, leaving her at the mercy of her stepmother Victoria and her two stepsisters, Cassandra and Priscilla. The girls had always resented Serafina for being their father's favorite, but after his death, their jealousy transformed into something far more sinister. "You're not family," Victoria had declared the day after the funeral, her voice cold as ice. "You're nothing but a burden now. If you want to stay in this house, you'll earn your keep." Within weeks, Serafina found herself moved from her beautiful bedroom to the cold, damp basement. Her stepfamily had taken over the entire house, selling her father's belongings and treating her like an unwanted servant. She cooked their meals, cleaned their messes, and endured their constant humiliation. "Serafina, the floors are dirty again," Cassandra would snap, pointing at already spotless marble. "Maybe if you put as much effort into cleaning as you do into feeling sorry for yourself, you'd actually be useful." "Don't forget to iron my dress for tonight's charity gala," Priscilla would add with a smirk. "Oh, wait, charity cases don't attend charity events. How fitting." What they didn't know was that Serafina's father had left her a $10 million inheritance in a trust fund that would become accessible when she turned 21. The family lawyer, Mr. Harrison, had been the only one who knew about this secret provision in her father's will. But Victoria wasn't as naive as she pretended to be. She had been searching through her late husband's papers and had discovered references to Serafina's inheritance. Instead of telling Serafina, Victoria had been working with a corrupt lawyer to forge documents that would transfer the money to her own daughters. The betrayal deepened when Serafina overheard a conversation that would change everything. Hidden in the basement, she listened as Victoria spoke on the phone with someone who sounded dangerous. "Yes, she's 18 now," Victoria was saying. "Beautiful, young, and completely under our control. Your clients in Dubai are willing to pay how much? 2 million? Perfect. She'll never be found, and we'll finally have enough money to pay off Cassandra's gambling debts." Serafina's blood ran cold as she realized her stepfamily wasn't just planning to steal her inheritance. They were planning to sell her into human trafficking to solve their financial problems. That night, Serafina made a decision that would change her life forever. Instead of running away or calling the police, she decided to fight back using the one skill she had been developing in secret: real estate investment. During her long, lonely hours in the basement, Serafina had been studying property law, market trends, and investment strategies. She had started small, using the tiny allowance her father had left her to buy distressed properties at tax auctions. Working under a fake identity she had created, she had been renovating and flipping houses, slowly building a small real estate portfolio. But now she needed to move faster and smarter than ever before. Using her knowledge of the city's property records, Serafina discovered that Victoria had been secretly mortgaging their family home to fund Cassandra's gambling addiction. The house was about to be foreclosed on, but Victoria was hiding this from everyone, including her own daughters. Serafina saw her opportunity. She had been saving every penny from her property deals, living on scraps while her stepfamily lived lavishly. She had accumulated $50,000 in cash, enough to make her next move. Working through shell companies and fake identities, Serafina began buying up debt from all of her stepfamily's creditors. She purchased Victoria's mortgage, Cassandra's gambling debts, and even Priscilla's credit card debt for pennies on the dollar. "This is brilliant," she whispered to herself in the basement, surrounded by property documents and legal papers. "They think they own me, but I'm about to own them." The plan accelerated when Serafina discovered that her stepfamily had succeeded in stealing her inheritance. The forged documents had been processed, and her $10 million had been transferred to accounts controlled by Victoria and her daughters. But Serafina had been preparing for this moment. She had been recording every conversation, documenting every piece of evidence, and building a legal case that would destroy them completely. Instead of confronting them directly, Serafina decided to let them hang themselves. She continued playing the role of their submissive servant while secretly orchestrating their downfall. The first domino fell when Serafina, now operating under the business name Phoenix Properties, bought the mortgage on their house. She scheduled the foreclosure for the same day. She planned to reveal her true identity. The second domino was purchasing all of Cassandra's gambling debts, which totaled over $800,000. Serafina now legally owned her stepsister's financial future. The third domino was acquiring Priscilla's credit card debt and the lease on her expensive apartment. Serafina had effectively become their landlord and creditor without them knowing it. But the final domino was the most devastating. Serafina had discovered that Victoria had been embezzling money from the charity organization where she worked as treasurer. Using her business connections, Serafina had gathered evidence of the embezzlement and was ready to turn it over to the authorities. The confrontation came on Serafina's 21st birthday, the day she would have legally inherited her father's money if it hadn't been stolen. "Happy birthday, basement girl," Victoria had mocked that morning. "Maybe next year you'll actually have something to celebrate." That afternoon, Serafina walked upstairs wearing a designer business suit she had purchased with her real estate profits. Her stepfamily was lounging in the living room, unaware that their world was about to collapse. "We need to talk," Serafina announced, her voice steady and confident. Victoria laughed. "What could you possibly have to say that would interest us?" Serafina placed a stack of legal documents on the coffee table. "I'm here to discuss the foreclosure on this house, the collection of outstanding debts, and the criminal charges that will be filed against all of you." The color drained from Victoria's face. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that I now own your mortgage, Cassandra's gambling debts, Priscilla's credit cards, and evidence of your embezzlement," Serafina said calmly. "I'm also talking about the human trafficking ring you've been planning to sell me to." Cassandra stood up, her face twisted with rage. "You're lying. You're just a pathetic servant girl with delusions of grandeur." Serafina smiled and pulled out her phone, playing a recording of Victoria's conversation about selling her to clients in Dubai. The room fell silent as the horrifying truth filled the air. "You see," Serafina continued, "while you were treating me like a slave, I was building an empire. Phoenix Properties now owns assets worth over $5 million, and I've been buying up your debts for months." Victoria's hands were shaking. "This is impossible. You're just a child. You don't have any money." "Actually, I do," Serafina said, pulling out her bank statements. "I've been flipping properties for 3 years, and I've been very successful. But more importantly, I have all the evidence I need to send all of you to prison." Priscilla was crying now, realizing that her luxurious lifestyle was about to disappear. "What do you want from us?" Serafina's smile was cold. I want my inheritance back plus interest. I want you to move out of my father's house. And I want you to face the consequences of your actions. But Serafina's revenge was just beginning. Over the next few months, she systematically destroyed their lives while building her own empire. She foreclosed on the house, forcing Victoria and her daughters to move into a small apartment in the worst part of town. She collected on all their debts, leaving them financially ruined, and she turned over the evidence of Victoria's embezzlement to the authorities, resulting in criminal charges. But the most satisfying part of her revenge was professional. Serafina had been using her real estate profits to acquire commercial properties, and she had been targeting businesses connected to her stepfamily's social circle. She bought the country club where they used to socialize, the boutique where they shopped, and even the restaurant where they held their charity events. Everywhere they went, they were reminded of Serafina's success and their own downfall. From basement to boardroom, how one woman built a real estate empire, read the headline in Forbes magazine 2 years later. The article featured Serafina, now 23, as one of the youngest female real estate moguls in the country. Her company, Phoenix Properties, had grown to be worth over $50 million, specializing in luxury developments and commercial real estate. But Serafina had also started a nonprofit organization that helped young women escape abusive family situations, providing them with legal aid and financial support. My stepfamily thought they could break me, Serafina said during her interview. But every day they humiliated me. I was getting stronger. Every night I spent in that basement, I was planning my future. They gave me the motivation to become unstoppable. The ultimate revenge came when Serafina's company went public 5 years later. At age 26, she became the youngest female billionaire in real estate, with a net worth of $1.2 billion. The IPO was celebrated with a massive party at the country club she now owned. Serafina wore a custom-made gown worth more than her stepfamily's entire yearly income, surrounded by celebrities, business leaders, and politicians. Victoria, Cassandra, and Priscilla were working minimum wage jobs, living in subsidized housing, and still paying off the debts that Serafina had sold to collection agencies. They watched the news coverage of her success from their tiny apartment, knowing that the girl they had tortured was now one of the most powerful women in the world. But Serafina's greatest achievement wasn't her wealth. It was the impact she had made on other people's lives. Her foundation had helped over 10,000 women escape abusive situations, and her scholarship programs had funded education for thousands of underprivileged students. The best revenge isn't just success, Serafina said during her TED talk that received over 5 million views. It's using your success to make sure nobody else has to suffer the way you did. During the audience Q&A, someone asked if she ever felt bad about destroying her stepfamily's lives. Serafina's response was powerful. I didn't destroy their lives. I simply stopped allowing them to destroy mine. They chose to steal from me, abuse me, and try to sell me. I chose to work hard, build something meaningful, and create opportunities for others. The difference in our outcomes reflects the difference in our choices. Years later, when Serafina was featured in documentaries about successful entrepreneurs, she would always end with the same message. They thought putting me in the basement would break me. Instead, it gave me the foundation to build an empire. Sometimes the darkest places become the launching pads for the brightest futures. Victoria had thought she was dealing with a helpless orphan who would always be beneath her. Instead, she had created her own worst nightmare. A woman with unlimited resources, unshakable determination, and the power to rewrite the rules of the game. The girl who had once slept in the basement now owned skyscrapers. The servant who had been treated like property now owned more property than her tormentors could ever imagine. And the victim who had been sold like merchandise had become the CEO who could buy and sell anyone who had ever wronged her. Serafina Nightingale had proven that sometimes the most devastating revenge is simply becoming so successful that your enemies become footnotes in your success story.